Hey, so I'm Nathan doing the podcast with Subscribed, and today we're meeting with Steve. So, really excited to learn more about Steve and the company he's working on and more about his background. So, hey, Steve, glad to have you
Hi,
join.
Nathan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I thought let's just jump right into it. So, can you
Sure.
tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, just to start with?
So I think I would put it simply that I've been an entrepreneur my whole life.
Nice.
I started kind of my own businesses ventures when I was 15.
Oh, cool.
At the time, I actually had to use my mom's ID to open my first bank account.
Yeah.
And I think what really drove me was that I didn't really like the ratio of how much people spend working in, let's say, day jobs versus how much they actually enjoy life. And I
Hmm.
kind of that stuck with me from very early age. And I was always hoping that there must be a different way. So when I
Yeah.
started to realize, that I can actually, let's say, sell some of my skills, then that kind of set me on the path of really embracing the entrepreneurial lifestyle.
Very cool. So you said you started at 15, you had to get your own, you had to fake an ID to get that bank accounts open and everything. What was the first business that you started? What were you
So
selling?
the first business, if I remember, was actually managing network for one of the local high schools.
Oh,
That
cool.
I got that job when I was actually helping one of my teachers, like build computers. Back in the day, you order the components and you had to assemble it. And I was doing this, for myself for already quite a few years. When I saw that, let's say, some of my teachers needed help, then I just stepped in, helped them, and they realized that, hey, this guy probably can do much more, can be helpful for other schools. So that's how I got to get my first contract in my father's name to help schools pretty much manage their networks.
Very cool. Okay, so I understand that, right? I think I've been toying with that idea of like, do I get another job right now? Do I try and found something back and forth of do you take the security of a job versus the risk of founding and does it work? So is there anything else that really motivated you to become a SaaS founder? Like what got you on this path of SaaS?
Um, so at the beginning, the term SaaS didn't exist. So
Right.
for me, the main motivation was freedom. Like I
Mm.
really thought that I can design my life in a way where I can do what I enjoy doing and
Mhm.
then be, paid for it. So that
Very
was that was my premise. And I think talking about SaaS and startups in general, I think that's ultimately what a lot of people are driven by, like the freedom of doing your own thing and figuring out how you get paid for it. And I
Mhm.
think even when I actually realized that some of the things are better when I hire people, then my whole team was always remote,
Yeah.
meaning that way before COVID, before it got cool, that having remote workers was really, interesting. I was running my team of up to about 16 or 20 people at the times, which was completely remote. And with
Yeah.
that remote team, we still managed to do projects for small companies as well as large enterprises alike. So I think ultimately freedom was what was driving me. And that's why I thought that like having my own business is probably the only way that I could see that happening.
Very cool. I think that makes a lot of sense and would resonate with a lot of people that are trying to start their own stuff right now is kind of the whole reason is freedom. I don't think anyone's like, man, I really want to struggle and found my own thing and
Exactly.
do that if there wasn't some sort of benefit like freedom to it. So right now, can you tell me about what you're working on and the problem you are currently solving with your current
Sure. So, little bit of background. Because I was always in tech.
company?
Uh, Eventually, I started my own software studio because I was working for a little bit for companies, and I realized that inside the companies there is a lot of inefficiencies, right?
Yeah.
And me designing my life for maximum efficiency, going to a corporation and seeing how all these inefficiencies are happening, I thought that I can do better. So I started a software studio, which was super lean and was really mainly focused on meeting the clients, projects, budgets, timelines, and so on.
Mhm.
From So that was kind of my journey of building out my tech team. And along the way, I spent almost all my proceeds, my money to build little things on the side.
Cool.
This was always kind of like a hobby, which brought me a lot of learning. But eventually I realized that this learning probably was cheaper than MBA, but still quite expensive.
Yeah.
I decided that I no longer want to really spend my time building other people's projects. The main reason was that I really put kind of my soul and heart into those projects, but most founders don't really think about the go-to-market strategy, the marketing, and everything that comes after you build your first version of the project. Everybody focuses on building the product, thinking that this is the hardest part. But the truth is, the hardest part only starts when you release the first version of the product, because that's when you need to iterate. You need to figure out who are your clients if you haven't figured out it before. Focus on marketing. And there is like so much that needs to be done, which is just not relevant to the product. And then ultimately, between average product with amazing marketing and amazing product with average marketing, the average product with great marketing will always win.
Right.
So this was kind of a lot of accumulated learning from my journey. And long story short, I've realized that from some of the projects, collected the data and figured out that people actually use one of my chatbots to learn languages. And I did realize that the language models, when they kind of came out about 2 years ago, would be really great for helping people learn language. I myself was learning languages on and off for a really long time. Almost everything that I have learned, I forgot. I didn't have a time to practice it. Or I had the time to practice it. I just didn't practice it. I didn't think it would be worth me paying for a private tutor, and then any kind of conversations with acquaintances and friends, it just doesn't work. No one wants to be there sitting or standing and listening to me or waiting for me to kind of produce a sentence. So that's why I realized that having a AI tutor can definitely help people who are already learning language, people who learned language in the past, or in people who want to learn language faster. Because most people, they don't really want to be learning a language. They want to know a language, right? They want to connect with other people. Most people don't think about learning another language so they can write emails or read poetry or do a lot of the advanced language stuff. They just want to speak and connect with other people.
Yeah.
So that's what Kippy is really focusing on. It's not going to teach you language from the very beginning, but once you have a certain basics, it will help you to accelerate to fluency on that communication level.
Okay, so who is your ideal customer? Is it someone who's already learned the basics and then they want to advance more and then they come to you? I'm trying to understand a little bit more about that.
Yes. So the ideal customer is someone who already knows basics of the language, who knows, let's say, the grammar and a little bit of vocabulary. So they can kind of start engaging in a more immersive experience. And so this is pretty much where Kippy helps. It will force you to speak. You cannot, type with Kippy. So Kippy really forces you to speak, but also along the way, it will guide you through the conversation if you are not on the level where you would be able to steer the conversation in the direction that you would like.
Cool. That's very cool. So it sounds like it's really like they've gone through the basic course, they understand the basic grammar, they've got the basic levels of vocabulary, and now they're really trying to just like level up their skills and continue. And
Exactly.
Very cool. And what was the inspiration behind this product? Like, how did you even come up with, oh, this is something I really want to invest my time in? And
So there are probably two angles to it. The short story is that I had a product on the market, which was a chatbot, and I saw that people are repurposing that product to learn languages.
okay.
Also, I realized that along my personal journey, I've created at least maybe 3 or 4 different software products which helped learning a language. The first one was like something which really brute force a vocabulary into your head.
Yeah.
I used that when I was learning German. I also gave that application to a friend of mine who was at the risk of failing his English exam, and he passed with quite a good grade.
Very cool.
Then later I built something which was also good for vocabulary, but it was using kind of a visual vocabulary, so you can point at the things and learn what it is. Because I realized that just learning vocabulary from something like Duolingo is very inefficient, because I'm learning words which I'm almost never going to use.
Yeah.
You very rarely use in a conversation words like cat or dog or table, but much more likely using things which are describing your activities or your day or life. And then from there, I developed my own system of learning languages for the purpose of travel. So let's say taking 100 most popular words in a language and then writing maybe 30 most common phrases that I know I will definitely use. Things like, well, how much is X? Where is Y? Can I have a menu? Can I have a bill? And a lot of practical things.
Yeah.
So combining all this into a product, which is now Kippy. So it is kind of, it came out of my own need. I wanted something where I don't really need to do the same thing for every language where I'm going to travel for a short time. So there's like that instant vocabulary of phrases and words that I can use right away. I can practice the pronunciation directly in Kippy, so I know that I can say it correctly.
Mm.
Plus, it has the additional benefit of practicing conversation. So it means that if I already know some language in the past, it will help me to retain it. Or if I'm
Yeah.
learning a language, it will help me to accelerate faster. So it's really, the premise is that it doesn't need to take years to learn a language on a communication level. If you are
Mhm.
committed, you can probably do it in few intensive weeks. If you are less committed, it's going to take you maybe a few months. But the time is really short for you to get to the communication level, subject to your commitment and the routines.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been I don't know, I've been struggling with Duolingo and Rosetta Stone, and it just seems like a lot of time gets spent and I'm still not at that.
I heard a lot of people are actually using Duolingo and they stopped using it because they realized that they are playing a game. They are not
Yeah.
necessarily advancing in their learning. And also with most of the products, they are designed as one type of class or lesson or a journey fits everybody. And then that's not where the age of AI education is heading to. Like where we are going is that the learning process will be adapted to the personal strength of the learner.
That's very cool. And when you first kind of launched this, what were some of the challenges that you faced? And did you have any, are there any learnings or anything that you wish you did differently when you first launched this that others can?
Yes. So I actually initially thought that I've done, quite a good research. So this time I decided I'm gonna do and implement all the advice that I was giving other people when I was running my software studio.
Mhm.
So I signed up as a student of English to
Mhm.
actually interview the live tutors to understand better the problem. Then I found testers. My plan was to launch in South Korea and Japan first, where the education system is favoring the written tests, and a lot of students are in the stage where Kippy can really help them, meaning
Yeah.
they understand the language, the grammar, they have some vocabulary, they just don't speak because the educational system is not putting enough emphasis on speaking and producing the language. There are a few things that I missed in my research. Some of them are very obvious, meaning that I focus on South Korea. The app is currently available on iOS, but let's say Japan itself has much higher penetration of, let's say, Apple users versus
Mhm.
Android users, but also Japan has much bigger population. So the Japanese market is actually much better
Uh,
for my initial launch than, let's say, South Korea. So I quickly refocused on Japanese market, which was a test market for, let's say, 2 months, South Korea and Japan. Then I realized that while I was looking at the data and optimizing the development of the product, I realized that I'm actually basing my optimization on data from countries, cultures, and languages which are nothing like anywhere in the world, right? So I realized that if I continue this way, I may end up with the perfect product for a very, very niche audience.
mhm.
And that's when I kind of thrown out my staged rollout for Kippy across the whole world. I had really all nicely planned. I just decided that I need to release this worldwide as a soft launch so I can balance some of the organic traffic versus the traffic and the user base that I had so I can make better educated decisions. And the
Mhm.
decisions really came soon where I realized that, for example, each country converts differently. So, for example, I was then focused on Japan, but found out that actually Japan converts from install to pay about half the rate of, let's say, what the Korean users convert compared to Japanese. And then I later
Mhm.
found out that other countries, let's say, convert better. So
Yeah.
I think I would say the learning here is that sometimes you think that you have like a great strategy, but
Yeah.
when you reflect on the strategy with the hindsight, you realize that it wasn't the best. And then it's very hard. So I would say not really worrying about having a perfect plan can help you get to your answers faster.
So I guess I have this question around like, what point is there enough research versus now it's time to test? And just in your opinion, it seems like you did a lot of market research, user research, interviews before launching. Did you feel like that was still beneficial for you? And do you feel you did enough? Or did you think that just testing would have been better?
I think that was beneficial, but it wasn't as probably effective as I thought it would be. And what I mean is that I had over 100 people signed up as a testers from Japan and South Korea,
Yeah.
plus people from tutors, like their own groups. And I would say only about 10% of the people actually actively use the product during the development, which I would attribute that some people got excited and they found out the product was not exactly
What they wanted.
very polished, so they stopped using it. And so probably two things that helped me throughout the development was that I actually really forced myself to be the student of a language, even let's say if I don't really have the basics that I'm advocating for anyone who's starting using Kippy to have. And the second thing is there are a few users who actually provided me with very good feedback in the terms of who've been highly motivated to learn the language. They knew some basics and they've been trying to use Kippy to advance, that learning. So this feedback was quite crucial in steering what may be important in the product and what things can be leave or left for later.
Very cool. And how did you end up getting your first paying customer? Like, what was that like for you, and when did that transition? Can you tell me a little bit about that story?
Sure. So the actual first paying customer was someone from my team who I pretty much asked to pay because it was released in the countries where I didn't have presence and didn't have a way to test it.
Yeah.
But the true random people came really from the organic traffic. I
Mhm.
think the important thing was that because I had the large group of testers, I was hoping that a good portion of those people would become users,
Yeah.
and some of them would become paying users. Now, it was a little bit scary when I released, and pretty much none of those users who've been in my test group really signed up for that. We are talking maybe one or two out of 100.
Yeah.
So I think there was a little bit of a scary time where the product is live. It was probably a couple of days, and then like kind of no one was purchasing it. At the time, there was also a free trial, so a
Mhm.
lot of people sign up for a free trial and immediately cancel it. So I also didn't know whether those people would eventually resubscribe and convert, or whether they would just churn.
Yeah.
And I think as the user base started to grow slowly, then I could see that there are segments of users who actually stuck with the product, who purchase it. Some of the users have over 100 days streak, which was super impressive to me because I know from my own experience how hard it is to commit every day to the learning experience.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And that's really encouraging to kind of see that usage on your platform and that there's people that are doing that. So that's very cool. And how did you then go to determining what price you should charge people? What was your kind of process for figuring out your ideal pricing? Because I know a lot of founders
Mhm.
struggle with that specifically.
So I first made a guess, and
Mhm.
the guess was looking at the competitors, looking how much they charge, and compare it to, let's say, maturity of the product. So if
Yeah.
I found a competitor and the competitor was quite mature and had a rich feature set in the product, then I would, let's say, discounted my price by a certain margin because my product just didn't offer the whole thing, the spectrum for all the learners. And then, so I started somewhere and then I experimented and looked at the data every time, let's say, I increased the price.
Yeah.
Eventually, I realized that the I created a kind of a communication and in onboarding where Kippy says that it only costs you as much as 2 cups of coffee per month.
Mhm.
So now I'm in the process of looking at the cost of, let's say, Starbucks latte in a country, and then say, okay, if you buy two of those, how much would it be in local currency? And then pricing according to that. I think actually the
Very cool.
prices for Kippy just went up today,
Mhm.
mainly because I'm now visiting San Francisco for a couple of weeks, and I realized the coffee here is really expensive. So I had to reflect this in my pricing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very expensive to get coffee here.
that's correct.
Yeah, very cool. And now that you have this out there, there's a lot of stuff in Gen AI going on. How are you kind of ensuring that that your product is standing out in the marketplace? Like, what is that process like for you right now with everything that's happening in the market?
So I would say the natural inclination is like, watching the competition and see what they are coming up with.
Mhm.
But that's like looking in the past, right? You don't know what they are working on next, and you don't know what they will be, let's say, releasing 6 months from now.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing now is I'm actually looking at the data that I have from the users that use the product,
Mhm.
and I'm looking at how I can make the product better for those users who already found value.
Yeah.
So there are some low-hanging fruit, and there are like the big feature steps that will introduce like completely different options or potentially attract completely different user base, which was left out because whatever feature was missing.
Mhm.
So I think it's one thing watching what is happening in the industry and the improvements and savings that can be brought into the product, but also looking at the actual user data and talking to the users. I think whether the business will stay as a lifestyle business and will be bootstrapped, or whether the business will receive funding and grow fast, it will not do wrong if it's building a product which is loved by the users.
That makes sense. And how much time do you spend with your customers, and what's your process of like I know for a lot of founders, getting the time to even spend with customers and getting those insights is kind of like gold. How do you go about getting your customers to engage with you, and how much time do you spend on that? What's your process?
So I did survey. So
Mhm.
for example, when Kippy launched in South Korea and Japan, most of the user base was from Japan. Japanese were not exactly that keen on being interviewed, but
Yeah.
some of them were willing to fill out my survey,
Mhm.
from which I learned maybe what was the customer, or who was the customer, and why they decided to use the product, or why they've been searching for a product to help them, with the language learning. Now I'm in the process to actually repeat it with the US customers.
Very cool.
Now, the to incentivize people, I technically segmented users into three groups. One is people who purchase the product and have active subscription. Second group, people who purchase the product but cancel the subscription. And then third group, people who use the product but never purchased anything. And then for these three groups, I have three slightly different surveys, which differ in one question based on their purchase status. And then in each of those survey, people can actually answer whether they would be willing to participate in a follow-up interview in return for some rewards. And that reward can be for people who, let's say, never purchased or purchased and canceled. That can be a free promo code for using the product.
Mhm.
For people who, let's say, are already paying, it can be some kind of a cash voucher for Amazon for, let's say, $10 for having a 20-minute call and interview.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. What do you use to send out your surveys?
Typeform.
Typeform?
I think it's Typeform for building the surveys, and then just send the push notification to the users based on, again, the data from the usage.
That's very cool. Yeah, I feel like those insights are just really important, and it's along the lines of what I've heard from other founders is just offering incentives to really try and bring that in and build your product from there. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and very cool that you are designing your product aligned with that. I think it's a lot of people's, I don't know if you have this opinion, but I feel like a lot of people skip that step. And I've been in a lot of startups and a lot of companies where it's just skipped and everyone's like, oh no, I know what we need to build. I know what we need to do without doing any of that. I don't know if you've had similar experiences.
I've done it many times, and I think so. One thing is that people skip the interview. Technically, the interview should be ongoing, I
Yeah.
think, and it cannot be outsourced. So you cannot replace the founder talking to the customer, and ideally the founder watching the customer silently use the product.
Mhm.
That can give you so much insights into how people actually gonna use your product, or whether the product is even fit for that type of customer. So I think this process should really be included as a part of the development loop. Like you always need to do it. The way I do it now is I have a couple of contractors who are in different countries, and they are always part of both the design but also the Q&A. So when there is an idea for how to make the process better, it's run through them, because different countries and different languages may have a different implementation or view of for a specific feature. And then having this feedback loop early, at least from the local people, helps. One is ready to test, then it goes again to a wider group of people just to collect feedback, who are not necessarily the direct paying customers, but it helps with doing, at least creating something which is meaningful and improving the experience. And then obviously collecting the data and interviews from the real users to see if it really meets the goal or improves the experience.
Yeah, that's very cool. And kind of have a question for you now. Like, you've had a long career of like since you were 15 starting businesses and starting this stuff. Looking back, are there any like mistakes that you made that you wish you'd have done differently that you could share with the audience that hopefully they can learn from, or some sort of advice that
So I think there is the saying, your network is your net worth. When I moved to London, I didn't really get it. So I wasn't really spending much time to create a strong network of people. I would say that it really helps. So for example, now while visiting in San Francisco, that's my main objective, is to build network and relationship with great people. The difficult part will be maintaining those relationships remotely, but it definitely helps. You meet people who can advise you, you can meet mentors, you can meet your customers, you can meet business partners. This can compound into massive advantage just in a few years.
Yeah, very cool. That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's always, I don't know, I've always tried to do this personally of anyone that I meet. It's like, if I can help you with something that is just like easy for me to help you with, I'll just do it, because you never know when that's going to come back. And I found that founders are really the one people that I can kind of that resonates with. Almost any founder I meet is always just very helpful, because it's like,
Yes. I
just
think
getting that paid back.
it's when you're doing anything or working on your venture, trying to build your business, you will very quickly realize how hard it is and how many obstacles are there along the way that you never thought of. So people who've been through this journey, they understand how hard it is, and they also understand that you cannot make it alone, and you don't know when you may need a favor or advice or intro or something, to help you along the way. So it's really worth it to invest in genuine relationships with people. You cannot probably have genuine relationship and a warm relationship with everyone, but there are definitely people who you can connect really well and you can keep in your circle.
Yeah, it's very cool. So, yeah, I think that makes sense. And, just wanted to really like thank you for taking the time to spend with us, and just really appreciate how much time you spent with us and sharing all your insights with us. And I think it'd just be very valuable for everyone else who's. So, yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Steve.